I let go of the chord progressions and the structural ability of what it is that I have in my head for just a guitar part. So I try not to be so hard-headed that I pick the guitar part and go, I'm not changing that. I try to look at the song and build everything around the song or the melody, and then the lyrics add to that once I put it to context. So
probably what's probably the fastest that you've written a song or created a song?
From beginning to end, this 2 weeks ago, I just did a song. I did a song a day from beginning to end, and which was incredibly fast for me. And by beginning to end, I mean from the process of I had nothing on the table, I had no chord progression in mind, put the whole thing out, go the process that I just described, and then mix it. I'm talking mix it, adjust it, EQ it, do everything that has to be done, and then and master it. And I pumped all that out. And well, I say one day, but it was really about 18 hours. So, but
yeah, your thought process is like, almost free writing, with an author, you just put pen to paper and then you write as much as you possibly can. And then when you look at it, you go back and you kind of revise it and,
right.
the way it is. So, I mean, that is an interesting process, definitely different from what I've been hearing from other artists. So, I think obviously there's not always a simple answer to how to be creative, but definitely yours is definitely a different way than I've been hearing from a lot of artists, which is great to be able to hear.
Yeah, my wife seems to think that I make everything more difficult than it has to be, and I'd have to say in this circumstance, she's correct.
Now, getting back to some instruments. I mean, obviously, you said that consign. You knew people early on with consignment shops, and you had guitars and all that as well. How many guitars do you currently own right now?
Oh Lord, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I have 16 right now. Yeah. Yeah, it's becoming a problem.
Yeah. Which one's the oldest?
The oldest is going to be a Taylor acoustic that I have. Well, the oldest to me is I have a 410 CE Taylor that I have toured all over this country, other countries, doing acoustic tours to support previous bands that I was in. Whether it be My Shop Pa, like you mentioned, or whether it be an older band that I was with before that, Third Class Passenger, I would tour around and do the radio stations. And that guitar is stuck with me for a long, long, long time. And it's kind of my trigger to Willie Nelson. Like trigger is Willie Nelson's guitar. And so that's kind of what mine is. This thing had duct tape. People will talk about it forever every time they see me at gigs, talking about how mine had duct tape all over it forever. And how none of the electronics worked, but I made it happen and got through it.
Yeah, I mean it's a lost art. I ask a lot of musicians if they ever name their instruments, and they very rarely say that they'd ever do. So so it's lost art, definitely.
Yeah, I can't say that I have.
Yeah. Now, I mean, obviously, when it comes to your band setup, I mean, do you have multiple guitars on stage, different songs, or, obviously during the night, if you're in an outdoor gig, or an indoor gig, it heats up, it cools down, instruments sound kind of different throughout the night. Do you ever do that?
I do. It depends on the style of gigs that I'm doing. A lot of the venues that I've done as a band setup, those are going to be indoor. I don't do a lot of, or I haven't recently done a lot of festival type style shows. And when I do, they're during the times of the year where the weather's not very drastic. It's not like on the East Coast, that's one of the benefits, is that the moisture kind of holds the instrument a little bit better. I know this sounds crazy, but you're just kind of used to what it does. So it's easy to adjust it back to what it needs to be. So, you learn really quick with the moisture and that happens on a guitar, how to readjust the neck really fast. So it's, it lasts long enough for the show. Whereas if you're in like Phoenix, it's 100 degrees and then it's 40 degrees. it's such a drastic temperature change. Over there, it's a lot more difficult. I used to tour, and part of my tour was I would be in the Caribbean, in the Virgin Islands and St. Thomas, and I would leave St. Thomas, and my next gig would be as soon as I landed in Salt Lake City, Utah. Everything went haywire. My voice didn't work because of the drastic change in the air and the altitude and the moisture. There was zero there, all of it's here, So that was some of the hardest touring that I ever did was doing that circuit, doing that cycle.
I was listening to an interview. It was not me personally, but somebody else's interview with one of the band members of Twisted Sister, and they talked about playing in Chile, Santiago, Chile, which is I don't know how many miles above sea level it is. So obvious, and you have to kind of acclimate yourself to it, and you can't necessarily do a full blown half an hour concert up in Chile and expect your stamina is going to be there,
right.
if you do it in one day. And they were talking about that, that kind of thing. So yeah, it kind of reminded me a little bit about that, where, you kind of change different atmospheres, and then things happen. Things don't sound exactly right. Voice goes out, energy is not there. So I can only imagine.
One of the tricks that we learned was that if you take the instruments out of their cases and you let them sit there for a few hours before anything starts happening, then right before you go on, you adjust them and make sure that you make sure everything is in key and working, and the necks aren't warped. And that seemed to work pretty well.
Yeah, because I know that there are some like old like violins that they'll sometimes have to be up in a high rise just because they're so old or whatever. So if you have to open it, then it's better to open it up on a less of an atmosphere. So yeah, I have like that too. I was going to ask you about stages. Being a coming from where you were starting out, you probably had an extremely small stage versus what you would have in a festival with a very large stage. Do you have a preference either way?
That's a good question. I think it goes both ways. So I enjoy having more of an intimate setting because people are more focused, and I feel like you can grasp the audience easier. And I feel like the same goes for really large audiences, or not really large, but if you're talking rooms of 1,000 people, those audiences are a lot better if it's busy. If that's packed. If you're in a 20,000 seat arena and you've got 1,000 people there, I bet that sucks. But that's not what I mean. I mean, if it's like a House of Blues and you've got 1,000 people there, that seems to have the same. You seem to have the same ability to grasp the crowd that way as you do if I'm playing in front of 4 people. But it seems like if you play inside of a venue like House of Blues and there's 40 people there, if you can see them through the lights, it's almost nerve-wracking because you can kind of see like people like whispering to each other and stuff. Maybe just saying things like, "Hey, man, you want to grab another drink?" Not necessarily talking about the band, but it just draws the eye of the performer, I think. And when that happens, it becomes a little more difficult to perform because you want to be like, "Focus, people, focus."
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and the comedians sometimes get that as well when they're telling jokes, and then you almost, they sometimes razz them. You can't razz them if you're in a band, so it's like, okay. But yeah, I can understand. I can absolutely perfectly understand that as well. But moving around as well. I mean, on a bigger stage, you get to move around a lot more than you do maybe in a smaller stage as well. I mean, is that an issue for you?
It's not. I've played so many shows on small stages. When I get to the bigger stages, it's easier to get lost because you're moving around and you're like, wait, where did the mic go again? So if you're playing and singing, you're like walking around, you're like looking at the crowd, your attention, or at least my attention span kind of gets thrown sometimes. I'm like, oh God, I'm supposed to start the next verse. You got to run back to the microphone. So I like both of them, but they had their 2 separate things.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely interesting. Actually, hopefully, things kind of open up this year, and we get more concerts again. Like I said, I hope you kind of make it out here to be able to perform out here as well.
Yeah, I would love to.
Yeah. One last question. What's going back to the production? I mean, just the production of this album in particular. You know, have you learned a lot from, maybe some of your past experiences going into a studio and producing? And, what kind of things have you gathered from your past and now going through this process again to be able to produce?
But the biggest thing that I think of, well, one, let me prefix it by saying that, a lot of this was co-produced with a friend of mine, Sean Atkins from Back Around Records in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And him and I partnering kind of together, he acted as a good wall for me to bounce ideas off of. And when I came up with something a little too off the wall, he would kind of stop me and say, well, I think maybe you should try going a different direction. So he really helped a lot for me, and helped me grow as an artist, song building. Because once I had somebody there that realized how ridiculous that I go about putting the songs together and the way that I do it, kind of as we described earlier, I think it helped me. I was able to hone in and say, okay, now that I know I act this way, now I can commit to it and I can build the songs this way and have confidence that the person in front of me isn't looking at me with their eyes crossed, laughing. So I'd say that if anything, I've gained confidence in the way that I write the songs and the way I feel about what I can get accomplished through playing the instruments and the instrumentation vocally as well.
Okay, quick follow-up question to that. When it comes to the album, I mean, have you decided the order of which the songs are, and is there any process in terms of that?
There is. We haven't necessarily decided exactly how we're placing the songs. Naturally you want it to grab the attention of the listener up front, and I think that there's some more of that epic sounding kind of slower, bigger sound kind of thing goes towards the end. So it almost acts as like a finale. Whereas you don't want to lose your audience in the center either. So what I do is I put something in the front to really grab their attention, something different, put something to kind of reel it back in a little bit. It's like fishing, Mark. So it's what you do is then, you bring them back in a little bit and they're like, okay, well, that's not so crazy. I kind of dig that. And then you throw them for a loop again, you come back and then you throw them for a loop again. And then you drop this like epic kind of thing going on that's a little bit slower, but it's always keeping it interesting, trying to keep it interesting. And I think we've done a good job so far as a game plan and what's been done with production and picking what songs are going to go where so far. I think we're going to have a little bit of success with this thing, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Now I believe the EP is coming out in February, correct?
Yeah. So you're going to be able to get it the last week in January. I guess that's next week sometime. There should be the ability to be able to go ahead and get the pre-order, and that's going to be through Apple Music and any platform that you can get it from for the pre-order for the full EP. And then February, the first week in February, I think it's February 7th, will be when the full EP will be released. And that's going to be a 5 or 6 song EP. So that depends on how fast we get this last track mastered.
And, tell me a little bit, where can people find you on social media?
I'm super easy to find. I'm Facebook, Spotify, Instagram. If you type in my website's DavyWilliamson.com, that's DAVY Williamson.com. You can find me there, and it has links to everything else. And then not only that, but if you just type Davy Williamson into Google, it's fairly easy to find me there as well. I've been at this a long time, so my name pops up, and there's not too many Davies out there, and if there are, what's up?
Well, thanks a lot for joining us, Davy.
All right, I really appreciate it. You guys take care.
You can check us out on Twitter at SWIV, and Somewhere in Vegas on Facebook. You guys can also check us out on Instagram at SWIV Podcast. That's at SWIV
podcast. We are going to do bi-weekly shows pretty much for the next couple months, so definitely check us out. We're on Spreaker, we are on iTunes, we are on anywhere that you guys get your podcasts. You guys can also go ahead and listen to us on the iHeartRadio app, or you can even ask